Human history has seen many grandiose adventures. We built the Great Pyramids in an attempt to get closer to the gods, and we constructed giant dams to subdue mighty rivers. However, what happened in the scorching sands of Arabia in the 21st century is beyond any logical understanding. The perfect mirror wall, which was supposed to become an eternal symbol of the triumph of engineering thought, stretching beyond the horizon and cutting through the desert like a scalpel, turned into a monumental monument to human pride. But one detail destroys the carefully constructed illusion of grandeur: a giant crack dividing the flawless facade into two parts. This is not just a random design flaw, but the logical result of a chain of criminal decisions made behind closed doors in the offices of top management. The world knows this structure as the ambitious Line Project, but the true story, captured in shadow accounting records and classified reports, will be remembered under a different name: the deception of the century. Official press releases vaguely mention unforeseen geological factors, but documents destroyed before the evacuation reveal a completely different picture. This is not just an unsuccessful urban planning idea, but a quiet but deadly deception worth trillions of dollars. These colossal funds were invested not to realize the promised dream, but to maintain an expensive illusion that was doomed to collapse from the very beginning. The moment the first smart glass panel cracks under the desert wind, the world will learn the bitter truth. The laws of physics cannot be bribed, and nature cannot be deceived, even with trillions of dollars. The high-profile investigation began not when the foundation was laid, but with an encrypted letter that arrived in Adrian West's secure mailbox at 4 in the morning. Adrian West was a professional construction auditor, a specialist in a narrow field who was hired by large international insurance companies before they made decisions about payments for destroyed bridges or collapsed skyscrapers. His past was overshadowed by a terrible tragedy that occurred with a railway viaduct in the Andes. It collapsed because of a tiny crack he had missed in his youth. The 60 deaths were a lesson to him, showing that cold concrete does not forgive mistakes, even the smallest ones. Since then, the search for invisible flaws had become his all-consuming professional obsession. The anonymous author of the letter, as revealed by a complex chain of digital traces, was located in the heart of the closed perimeter of Neom. The message contained no direct threats or demands, only dry technical information that could lead to a collapse in the stock prices of leading construction conglomerates. The attached files contained a detailed geodetic survey of the 43rd sector. The photographs clearly demonstrated what had been carefully concealed in the official glossy reports. The foundation of the city of the future already had a critical deviation of 4 degrees at the initial pouring stage. Secret data shows that the 500-meter wall was not built on a rock foundation, as claimed in colorful brochures for investors. In fact, it was built on a layer of extremely mobile salt marsh. Someone deliberately replaced the geological soil samples, presenting a shaky salt crust as a solid granite monolith to prevent the construction of the century from being halted. Looking at the spectral analysis of the soil, Adrian felt a familiar sticky cold in his stomach, the same one he had felt before the disaster in the Andes. This was not just a case of ordinary corruption. It was a real-time bomb, 170 kilometers long. Inspired by professional excitement and a desire to make up for past mistakes, West accepted the offer to work as an independent consultant. It came to him through an intermediary firm 2 days later. He was about to voluntarily put himself in a cage with a tiger to demonstrate to the whole world that this cage was made of wet cardboard. The flight lasted 12 hours, and the private jet landed on a closed runway in the heart of an endless ocean of scorching sand. Stepping out of the cool cabin of the plane, Adrian's first impression was of the unnatural, feverish activity that reigned around him. That night, the desert knew no rest. Heavy trucks carrying concrete moved in a continuous stream, bumper to bumper, raising clouds of dust that seemed visible even from orbit. It was not the number of vehicles that surprised Adrian, but their strange route. He noticed a long column of old, rusty dump trucks without license plates heading not toward the quarries, but toward the wild dunes. Only later would he learn the whole truth about the activities of the so-called sand mafia. The official deadline for the work had long since passed, 6 months earlier. In order not to miss the strict deadlines, the contractors resorted to illegally digging sand from the stabilizing dunes around the line itself. They were effectively undermining their own foundation by stealing the very soil that was intended to protect the wall from wind erosion. It was a truly insane act, driven by a primal fear of huge penalties. The line rose proudly above the desert, cutting across the horizon like a glittering strip. However, this majestic sight was frighteningly deceptive. Adrian, using his portable laser equipment under the guise of standard leveling, discreetly measured the vibration of the soil at the foot of the wall. The instruments gave critically high readings. The round-the-clock operation of heavy equipment created a constant low-frequency resonance. This monotonous sound was gradually but inevitably turning the wet sand beneath the foundation into a fluid slurry. In engineering geology, this process is called thixotropic soil liquefaction. Under the massive trillion-dollar project, solid ground was turning into a liquid mass. Adriana met Karim, the project's chief curator, a man dressed in an impeccably expensive suit, covered with a thin, powder-like layer of dust that was everywhere. There was not a trace of Eastern hospitality in his manner, only the tension of a man who expected betrayal at any moment. Trying to hide the trembling in his hands, Karim constantly adjusted his cufflinks. Without further ado, they immediately headed for the problem area. As they walked, Adrian noticed another unusual detail. Every 100 meters along the wall, powerful industrial refrigeration units rose up, resembling huge containers. Hoses covered with a thick layer of frost led into the scorching soil. Maybe it's a new cooling system for server clusters, Adrian suggested, although he already knew the answer. Yes, it's our latest development, Karim replied quickly, looking away. West understood perfectly well that the situation was very bad. It was a desperate, almost suicidal attempt to freeze the ground. Engineers were trying to artificially form a lens of permafrost in one of the hottest areas of the planet to prevent a giant skyscraper from collapsing. Millions of dollars were being spent daily on liquid nitrogen in a futile battle against the laws of thermodynamics. Upon arriving at the site, Adrian saw with his own eyes a crack in the concrete pad that workers were hastily trying to cover up with cosmetic mortar. This was not a major repair, but rather cosmetic touch-ups on the face of a patient who was dying. The foundation was not just cracking, it was slowly crumbling, dragging investors' hopes down with it. Adrian gained access to the temporary workrooms located in the module directly opposite the mirrored facade. The window offered a stunning view. The wall perfectly reflected the sky, creating the illusion of infinity. However, a professional eye immediately noticed a dangerous anomaly. The air temperature in the corridor between the wall and the residential modules was 10 or even 15 degrees higher than in the desert. The asphalt on the technical tracks was so soft that it resembled children's plasticine, and under the influence of heat, the plastic parts on the parked buggies melted and lost their original shape. In the evening, immersed in a detailed analysis of the facade system drawings, West discovered savings that went beyond all reasonable limits and bordered on sabotage. In the original design, the architects had stipulated the mandatory use of smart glass with a multi-layer coating that diffused light. However, the invoices obtained from the hacked database of the procurement department featured a cheap Chinese analog, ordinary tempered glass with a high mirror reflection coefficient. The huge difference in cost ended up in foreign accounts, and the line turned into a facade used as a weapon. The project turned into a huge solar furnace, The concave shape of the wall, formed due to the uneven settling of the foundation, collected the sun's rays in one point, similar to the infamous London skyscraper Wookie-Tokie, which melted cars in the parking lot. Only the scale of this disaster was incomparably greater, thousands of times greater. The line did not just heat up, it methodically destroyed all living things within its radius. It is understandable why there were no birds to be seen around the construction site. They burned alive in the air, falling into the deadly focus of this mirror trap. West discovered a secret cleaning service report stating that every morning, workers collected buckets full of charred bodies of migratory birds at the base of this ecological miracle. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, Adrian woke up to a sound resembling a powerful cannon shot. One of the facade panels had burst under the strain. Looking out the window, he witnessed a strange scene. In the pitch darkness, industrial climbers were hurriedly replacing a huge sheet of glass, the size of a tennis court. Everything was done silently, without any spotlights, so as not to reveal their presence to competitors' spy satellites. Looking through the purchase logs, the auditor was horrified to discover that more than 5,000 such panels had been replaced in the last month. It turned out that the structure was not designed for thermal expansion. During the day, the metal heated up to 70 degrees and expanded, and at night, when the desert temperature dropped, the metal contracted, destroying the glass fastenings. As a result, the city was literally falling apart, shedding its skin every day. The next morning, Adrian went for a walk to the Greenbelt, which was advertised everywhere as a real oasis in the heart of the city. In reality, it was more like the set of a post-apocalyptic movie. Thousands of exotic trees, brought from Europe and Asia, stood lifeless. Their roots had rotted due to severe soil salinization caused by desalination plants that couldn't cope with the load and irrigation with technical water. However, that wasn't the most shocking sight. Adrian noticed a team of workers in respirators using sprayers to treat the dry, brown leaves. As he got closer, Adrian smelled a strong chemical odor. The leaves were covered with a thick layer of bright green polymer paint. They were painting the dead forest so that from above it would create the illusion of life for the high-ranking inspection that was due to arrive the following week. "It's all for the drones," whispered one of the workers, noticing Adrian staring at them. "From the air, it looks like a paradise, but up close, it's like a graveyard." Convinced that it was useless to seek the truth here, West decided to find the project's chief geologist, Dr. Yusuf, the author of all the fake soil reports. The Human Resources Department responded very curtly, with clear hints of a threat that the doctor had resigned for health reasons and immediately left the country. An attempt to contact him through personal contacts led to a frightening result. The geologist's phone was disconnected and all his social media accounts were deleted, as if the man had never existed. Adrian understood the habits of old scientists perfectly well. They never trusted cloud storage. Using an old geodetic reference scheme that Yusuf often used in his early research, West calculated the coordinates of a control point located in the desert, 2 kilometers from the perimeter. Under an inconspicuous geodetic mark, he found a sealed container known as a dead drop. Inside was a hard drive and an old tape recorder. The voice on the recording trembled heavily. "They're pouring the polymers now. I warned them 100 times that the reaction would be exothermic. The polymer actively interacts with the salt marsh, releasing a huge amount of heat. As a result, we are not strengthening the foundation, but literally heating it up." Yesterday, the soil temperature at a depth of 40 meters rose to 90 degrees. Concrete piles are rapidly losing their strength. The foundation is no longer a foundation, but rather red-hot lava. "I'm leaving before they force me to sign the commissioning certificate. If you hear this, run away from here. The line will collapse soon." Having gathered enough evidence, Adrian returned to the module to transfer the data to an encrypted external drive. However, as soon as he connected to the network, the laptop screen flashed red. The local network immediately blocked all outgoing connections. The Citadel security system, which the developers had boasted so much about, instead of protecting against terrorists, acted as a digital prison to prevent the leakage of inconvenient facts. Suddenly, the door lock clicked, swinging it open. Marcus Thorne, head of corporate security, appeared in the doorway. He was not an ordinary security guard in uniform, but a pragmatic mercenary specializing in corporate espionage and problem-solving. He entered confidently, as if he were the master of the situation, and placed a tablet on the table. "You have a wonderful family, Mr. West," Thorne said without the slightest hint of emotion. The tablet screen was broadcasting live. Adrian saw his house on the other side of the world. The camera was pointed at the living room, where his wife and daughter were peacefully eating breakfast, unaware that they were being watched. "The Citadel has a wide view," Thorne said with a tight smile. "You now have a choice. You can become a very rich man who will confirm the reliability of the project and calmly go on a well-deserved vacation. A substantial advance payment with 6 zeros is already waiting for you in your offshore account. But there is another possibility. You can become the victim of a tragic accident. The desert is merciless, and it's easy to get lost in it. Heat stroke, a poisonous snake bite, car trouble. Unfortunately, there are many possibilities." Feeling completely superior in the conversation, Thorne accidentally revealed the secret that had caused them so much excitement. Investors insisted on opening the first sector in a week, coinciding with the visit of international delegations and the royal family. Delaying construction to strengthen the foundation threatened bankruptcy, international scandal, and imprisonment for everyone involved in the project. The decision was made to go all in and open a kilometer-long facade section for show. The emergency condition of the supporting structures was to be hidden behind decorative panels and drapery. Thousands of people were to be allowed into a building that was held together by promises, corruption, and evaporating liquid nitrogen. Knowing that open confrontation would lead to the death of himself and his family, Adrian pretended to be completely broken. He feigned complete submission, agreeing to sign all the necessary documents, but set one condition. He needed to conduct a final inspection of the lower levels so that the report would look convincing. Thorne, believing he had successfully concluded the deal with the auditor, agreed. Deep into the desert, they descended into service tunnels that went far below its surface. Here, reality was strikingly different from the illusory renderings. Like night and day. The heavy, humid and unbearably hot air was saturated with the hum of industrial pumps, continuously pumping out water mixed with sand and chemicals. Covered with a dense network of cracks, the tunnel walls were marked with digital beacons that recorded their expansion in real time. Adrian saw with his own eyes the truth of geologist Yusuf's words. He saw that the main supporting beam of Sector A1, a massive steel structure 1 meter thick, was noticeably deformed. The steel, as if exhausted, began to twist like a screw under the influence of a critically uneven load caused by soil subsidence. To compensate for this, the engineers resorted to a barbaric method. They welded additional metal sheets directly over the rust and cracks. However, this only increased the weight of the already overloaded skeleton. Steam burst out of the cooling pipe with a loud hiss, which instantly hit the exposed cable, forming a drop of condensation. As a result, a bright spark flashed. This entire gigantic mechanism, standing on clay supports, was surrounded by a huge puddle of gasoline, and any change in temperature or even a slight gust of wind could trigger a chain reaction. Suddenly, the warning system sounded an alarm. An urgent storm warning appeared on Thorne's tactical watch. External perimeter sensors recorded a rapid drop in pressure and a sharp increase in wind speed to storm levels. A Khamsin was approaching, a sandstorm the likes of which had not been seen in centuries. For a normal structure, this might not have been a problem, but for the line, Overheated, deformed, and deprived of aerodynamic properties, such winds would be a fatal blow. For the first time ever, Thorne's expression changed after receiving the radio message. The mask of a cynical professional slipped, revealing animal fear. "Generators!" he shouted into the radio. "What happened to the generators?" The ground freezing system had completely failed. The approaching storm had kicked up dust that completely clogged the air intake filters of the diesel generators that powered the refrigeration units. As a result, all the pumps had stopped. Without a constant supply of refrigerant, the soil, overheated by a chemical reaction, began to melt rapidly, softening the ice cushion. The sandy mass under the foundation was thawing at an incredible rate. Adrian realized that the disaster he had predicted would happen today. The lights in the tunnel went out and dim emergency lighting came on. "We need to get upstairs immediately," whispered Thorne, grabbing his gun and forgetting about possible witnesses. "Our helicopter is already waiting." "Helicopters don't fly in a storm like this, Marcus," Adrian calmly remarked. "We're in real trouble." Confusing Thorne, who was trying to contact the pilots, West struck him on the arm with a heavy construction board. The gun slipped from his grasp and with a dull thud disappeared into the darkness, falling into a drainage channel filled with dirty water. Adrian did not resist and without wasting a minute, rushed to run. His goal was not the exit door, but the plaza-level server room. Not to turn off the mirrors, but to manually activate the red code protocol, which would trigger a full fire alarm throughout the complex. Only the heart-rending wail of sirens could force the workers, thousands of them, to drop their work and rush to the evacuation gates. Running through the technical labyrinths, suffocating from the humid heat, he heard the concrete above him make a terrible, high-pitched sound. It was a cry, as if the concrete was beginning to sing as the steel reinforcement inside the slabs stretched to its breaking point. The line literally foreshadowed a rupture. At that moment, all hell broke loose on the surface. A sandstorm hit the mirrored wall with millions of abrasive particles. The poor quality glass, already under enormous internal stress due to sudden temperature changes, began to cloud over. The strong wind, pressing on the sail of the huge wall, created a giant lever that tore the building from its weakened and thawed foundation with incredible force. West burst into the main control room. The operators, deprived of rest, stared at the monitors, flooded with the red light of alarm signals. "Why aren't the gates open yet?" West growled as he crossed the threshold. "The Citadel has blocked the entire perimeter," replied one of the engineers, his face white with horror. "The system is interpreting the wind vibrations as a terrorist attack. It has locked the doors to isolate the perceived threat. The artificial intelligence created to protect people was now becoming their killer." The Citadel relentlessly followed its security protocol, unaware that its enemy was not a terrorist threat, but physics itself. Adrian rushed to the main console. He didn't have the access codes, but he wasn't going to use them anyway. Grabbing a fire axe from the wall, he struck the server rack controlling the locks with all his might. Sparks flew, smoke billowed, and the acrid smell of melted plastic filled the air. A reassuring message appeared on the display, informing him that the emergency reset had been completed and the doors were now unlocked. At that moment, the main power frame failed. One of the expansion joints, designed for a displacement of only 5 centimeters, burst open half a meter with a roar like a bomb explosion. Adrian looked out the panoramic window and saw the neighboring sector, where tables were already being set up for the investor banquet, slowly begin to tilt, as if in a terrible vision. The building's perfect mirror surface was distorted, reflecting a distorted, desperate scene. Glass rained down like deadly hail. Huge shards, weighing hundreds of kilograms, fell from a height of half a kilometer, spinning in the air like guillotines. They mercilessly chopped up equipment, temporary structures, and power lines. The slope of the sector reached a critical angle, and the concrete slabs collapsed inward. A deadly domino effect began. With a crash, thousands of tons of steel and glass collapsed into the pit, raising a cloud of dust that merged with the storm to form an impenetrable veil of darkness. The impact was so strong that Adrian's nose began to bleed. Barely managing to get to the helipad, he felt the section he was in shake from the blast. Below, in the cloud of dust and whistling wind, bright flashes flashed as fuel and chemical tanks exploded. Marcus Thorne never made it outside. In his final moments, he tried to copy financial data to a secure server, trying to save the company's assets rather than his own life. His insane devotion to the system was the cause of his demise. Adrian, clinging tightly to the handrails of the platform, which was shaking like an earthquake of magnitude 9, watched as the dream of trillionaires turned into the most expensive ruins in human history. No magic, just gravity, structural integrity, and human greed. 6 months passed. The world media, controlled or intimidated, called what had happened a tragic coincidence and an unprecedented weather anomaly. The corporation's lawyers acted flawlessly. They blamed small subcontractors and the late geologist Yusuf, who was posthumously accused of negligence, and called the accident a force majeure. Insurance companies compensated for part of the losses, but the project was completely halted. Adrian West managed to get the data out without any consequences, including the geologist's audio recordings and videos of the collapse. However, none of the major publications, such as the New York Times or The Guardian, had the courage to publish them. The fear of huge lawsuits worth billions of dollars proved stronger than the desire to reveal the truth. The information ended up on the dark web, where it became the property of conspiracy theorists, who are generally considered a laughingstock in society. Despite the official statement that the Line project has not been closed, but is undergoing technological review and reconstruction, satellite images speak for themselves. The pit is gradually but inevitably being filled with sand. The metal skeletons sticking out of the dunes resemble the ribs of a giant prehistoric skeleton destroyed by the wind. Passing Bedouins have already begun to dismantle the city of the future for scrap metal, selling the titanium beams on the black market. Adrian is hiding under a different name in a country with no extradition treaty. He does not feel like a winner. He understands that the real prison is not physical walls, but ambitions alienated from reality. And sometimes, waking up at night to the sound of the wind, he looks in the mirror and thinks that the most terrible monster does not dwell in the darkness. The most terrifying monster is a man in an expensive suit who signs a contract, knowing full well that its price will be paid with the lives of others.